Welcome to Pages and Pods. Today we'll examine how an egregore is conceived and how it functions in the physical world. In particular, we will look at it through discussions of Rudolf Steiner, Kabbalists, and 20th century occultists. In common parlance, all egregores are thought forms, but not all thought forms are egregores. Using this axiom, I will identify egregores as the collective thoughts of two or more human souls. Although the originating thought may occur in the mind of a single individual, its power and structure will depend on the number of souls who identify with it. Imagine an egregore as an emergent creation of the human soul. It originates in the mind, which exists in the astral plane. All events of the mind, thoughts, inspirations, and imaginations occur in your astral body and therefore exist in the astral plane. They become manifest in everyday life through actions in the physical plane. An egregore differs from a passing thought because it is shared and accepted by others. But what does that mean? If you invite someone to a coffee date and they accept, does that make your budding relationship an egregore? In some ways, yes. Your friendship is taking form in the astral plane within consensual thoughts. Your date is materializing through action in the physical plane. Rudolf Steiner explored this idea in his lecture about the astral world. He said, so that if such an astral being, which he means as yourself, has a thought, it immediately stretches out the corresponding feelers that have the form of this thought, and another being stretches out from itself the substance. Both now mutually interpenetrate each other and are in the same space as a newly formed being. In this way, there's a continual interpenetration of the most varying opinions, thoughts, and feelings. That sounds very intimate for a first date. Let's take this concept of two astral beings a step further. You two will meet again, but this time it's with a group of friends. In the physical plane, you are meeting to form a club. Perhaps it's about raiding coffee shops. You've all agreed to create a podcast about the quality and variety of coffee served in your area. You have different tastes for your brews. Some like hot, some like ice, some like strong. Maybe someone only drinks decaf. But you've all agreed to work on the same idea together. Steiner said, in the astral world, the most completely opposite ideas can interpenetrate each other. It must be said that when things are discussed in the physical world, contradiction prevails. But in the astral world, what prevails at once is conflict. For as a being of the astral world, one cannot keep back one's thoughts to oneself. They become deeds immediately. The objects are there at once. But as time goes on and the podcast grows, contentions erupt. This is always the case when there's no unifying idea. Steiner explains the astral world is a contentious, even dangerous place for ideas. He says they begin to fight each other, and the idea that is the more fruitful, which is therefore the most right, will annihilate the other and vindicate itself. This does not mean the friendship will end or that the coffee group will fail, only that to endure, the thoughts must come into alignment and a true egregore will coalesce and form. But now the coffee group has grown and has over 100,000 subscribers. They are growing in influence. They have sponsors and have directed themselves into organic, fair trade, self-sustaining, small farm-grown beans. The egregore has grown from the formation of just a few thoughts into an association of tens of thousands of astral beings projecting their thoughts into it. You see, the thoughts that go into the astral world will stay in the astral world. Over the long run, they can stay there for generations. Steiner said this, all that we throw out of ourselves into the astral world at one time will reappear in times to come on the physical plane. What we sow in the astral world, we reap on earth in future times. We are reaping today the fruits of the narrow materialistic thoughts strewn by our ancestors into the astral world. But this egregore is here and now. The thoughts of the coffee group have manifested as sales, purchases, even changing the desires of individuals. The spiritual plane is a point of contact between the human soul and the spiritual realm, from angels and demons. While we are always delighted to invite in the influence of an angel who can direct itself into our thoughts, the danger of our egregores is the unwanted influence of the demon world, the undeveloped creatures desiring to take form in the physical plane, including the Ahrimanic and Luciferic forces. One day the coffee group is overwhelmed by extremists. They want to kick out the coffee growers, take over the farms, impose a righteous state of affairs over all of coffee. Territorial wars are fought. There are coffee embargoes. The fields are destroyed. It may sound unbelievable, but idle thoughts in European coffee houses have led to revolutions. Take, for example, in 1675, Charles II of England issued a proclamation titled A Proclamation for the Suppression of Coffee Houses. This is a real thing. He claimed that they spread false, malicious, and scandalous reports that stirred public unrest. The ban was withdrawn, though, within just a few days because of public backlash. Coffee houses became hubs of dissent and revolutionary discussion. Those collections of coffee-inspired thoughts took form in the astral plane and created action in the physical world. As humans, we can't create fully autonomous entities. Only the one true God, the divine creator, can do that. But we can create thought forms, collections of our will and desire projected into the astral plane. The 20th century occultist Robert Amberlain described an egregore as an artificial, collectively generated being formed through sustained devotion, ritual discipline, and shared belief. In his words, in the invisible outside of the physical perception of man, there exists artificial beings generated by devotion, enthusiasm, or fanaticism, which we call egregores. Thus, the egregore lives on the physical plane where it acts through the intermediary of man, and on the higher plane where it acts through the intermediaries of the entities. The material life of egregores is assured through the number of their members, their discipline, their spiritual union, their strict observance of vivifying and preserving rituals. In Rudolf Steiner's teaching, an astral thought form can be ensouled or overshadowed by a higher spiritual entity when sufficient moral, imaginal, and devotional substance has been built up to make it a suitable organ of manifestation. Although theosophists such as Madame Blavatsky and Annie Bessant would ascribe the egregore with autonomy, this may be the misattribution of the will of the dark entities projecting themselves into the egregore. Dion Fortune, however, provides a better analysis by treating group thought forms as constructs built and sustained by collective emotion and ritual focus, not as inherently self-willed beings. But she warns that once formed, such psychic constructs can be occupied, fed, or manipulated by discarnate or hostile entities if the group lacks moral discipline or magical hygiene and becomes influenced by these egregores. Fortune's understanding is in alignment with Kabbalistic teachings that human thoughts and collective spirits generate Kelim, or vessels, and Levushim, or garments. They have no agency, but are structured thoughts of spiritual form. But when these structures are distorted by misdeeds, imbalance, or egoic intensity, they can become sites of attachments or nourishments for the Sitra, Achra, and dark entities called Dybbuks, which cling to an available psychic spiritual vessel. Steiner emphasized these points in his lecture, Individual and Human Karma. Steiner explains how the Luciferic forces, in his words, penetrate into the astral bodies. Though he never used the term egregore, He refers to these collective desires projected into the astral plane as embodied thought forms. He explains that Lucifer carries on his existence during the course of the evolution of mankind by working upon the human through the astral body. Though the angels may guide our egregores into noble acts of kindness, evil forces can turn them into violence, wars, and suffering. Steiner directs you to center your thoughts on the Christ stream, to be in communion with Christ, to live a moral and ethical life so the thoughts you put into the astral plane are shielded from Lucifer and Ahriman. But if that's not your calling, then follow the eightfold path of the Buddha. Become physically and spiritually aligned with the Shakti. Complete the mitzvot. Most importantly, keep in mind that the egregores you create or support can be apprehended by Luciferic desires, the Ahrimanic activities, the Sitra, Achra, and evil forces explained in the Kabbalah. All are competing to set you apart from the divine emanation. So the next time you're chatting with friends over coffee, consider that your thoughts are not there at your table, but they are taking form in another plane of reality, the astral plane, where angels are watching over you to guide your spiritual development. But nearby, the forces of evil inclinations are ready to invade your mind and distort your future. But wait, before moving on to the next podcast, click subscribe. Give up a like, and most importantly, leave a comment, and I'll return one back to you.